It's time to get you caught up with all things sports.
Yes! 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 Yes!
On the throw-in.
One thing is certain. None of this is possible without you, the listeners.
From baseball, football, wrestling, and more, covering local Cincinnati sports stories, news, and highlights.
Why is he always calling me meat?
With your host, Justin Trento.
When it's all said and done, we're going to look back and remember this is what started it all.
Available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Let's play the ball! Let's play the ball!
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Throw-In. Today is Wednesday, August 2nd of 2023, and I'm excited to be here. Had yesterday off. We're back again today, 2-hour program, leading you guys up until AEW Dynamite. It's 200th episode. We'll talk about that this evening, but we got breaking news to kick things off, getting underway with AEW. Excuse me, clearing my throat there. AEW. Tony Kahn signed signed the contract extension with the Elite to a multi-year deal. This is some pretty big news coming out of AEW. Earlier today, AEW renewed the contracts with the Elite. That is Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Adam Page. And, you know, you have to, I think, be acceptive. I think a lot of the rumors, a lot of the predictions, a lot of maybe the wants, right, of this, you know, maybe, you know, I've heard conversations out there that, you know, or people were wanting to see the Young Bucks go to the WWE because you can, you know, talk about potential feuds. Well, you know, there's a lot of things that go in behind contracts and the futures and placements and this and that. Let me put it to you this way. I think this is one of the better deals made, and I think this steals the summer spotlight of AEW news. I know they have a pay-per-view in London coming up, and I just don't compare that event to what does this mean for AEW? This means Tony Khan should feel really happy about himself because he has assigned 3 of probably the biggest indie athletes there is today. And now you shut down the rumors. You don't have to worry about any possibilities or any conversations of one of these 4 men jumping ship to another brand. That goes out the window. You don't have to worry about that no more. What else does this do? Okay, well, Tony Khan, you can rest at peace. AEW is the official home, the inaugural home of the Elite. Okay, and I feel like it only makes sense and it feels right to keep them in AEW. And, you know, Tony Khan's pretty lenient about allowing one or 2 of them go off to Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, to another indie promotion to compete once in a while. And I think he will continue to allow that. But, you know, I think this is a insurance claim that you can state and make among, you know, AEW fans, AEW officials, AEW talent. And in my opinion, the Elite are the number one on top of the food chain. They are the people to beat. earlier this week, I got a chance to be on Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast with Steve Barber because Dwaylen Davis was out down in Florida for a vacation. And we hope things are going well for him. But one of the big, the topic was, when is it time for athletes or companies to part ways with each other? And one of the categories, or one of the pre-subjects to that, was maybe hitting the ceiling with your company. There's a difference between being the top of the food chain, and there's a difference between hitting the ceiling of your company. Being at the top of the food chain, that means you are the number one person that people should go in order to claim themselves as the best of that time. We're talking about, like, for example, Roman Reigns. He is at the top of the food chain. He is main evented in WrestleMania. He is the WWE Undisputed Universal Champion. He is the tribal chief of the Olani family. And he is the food chain. This Saturday at SummerSlam, available on Peacock, you're going to see Jey Uso, who wants to be at the top, who deserves to be at the top, who thinks he should be at the top. He's going after the top of the mountain, and that's Roman Reigns. Finn Balor is going after Seth Rollins. Cody Rhodes is going after Brock Lesnar, which is considerably one of the guys who's at the top of the food chain. You think of someone to beat on Raw, to make an impact, to leave a name. Cody Rhodes is one of those guys. Roman Reigns, if you could pick up a win over Roman Reigns, I don't care how you do, whether it's, other than disqualification, if you could pin Roman Reigns, you can make him submit, then that is you're beating at the top of the food chain. And then when you look at, you've accomplished everything, the ceiling, you've reached the ceiling in your company. You talk about, prime example, Drew McIntyre. Now, he has an upcoming Intercontinental Championship match against Gunther this Saturday at SummerSlam. But Drew McIntyre has almost arguably done everything, maybe other than main event, WrestleMania. He has done everything he can in the WWE. For AEW, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman, I feel, has a little bit more room to excel. But Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, I feel, have hit the ceiling top with the WWE. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are the people to beat if you're looking to get into, to beat the pillars. That's why we've seen guys like Jon Moxley. That's why we've seen guys like Chris Jericho go after them. So some pretty big news coming out of AEW. As I mentioned, we'll talk about it later in our program, but we have AEW Dynamite's 200th episode. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. All right, coming up in tonight's program here, we will talk, football's underway. We're about 6 weeks out. And one thing I was thinking of, as I was off yesterday was, Monday I gave you quarterback rankings. How can I continue the NFL conversation, jumping forward, moving forward, and I was like, I need to go through every team. So this morning, I went through I divided, obviously it's each division. 1 week is going to be each division. We're going to start off in the NFC today. We're going to start off with the NFC East this week. We're going to be talking about the Cowboys. We're going to be talking about the Giants this week, today alone. And we'll come back with the Eagles, and the Commanders tomorrow. And then on Friday, I'll give you my overall thought of how this division is going to go down and how far are they going to make it into the postseason. So I will be providing you with my NFL team predictions per schedule. But we got some football to talk about today. Not necessarily Cincinnati Bengals today, unfortunately. And we're going to probably talk a little bit more about the San Francisco 49ers, some Kansas City Chiefs, and also some quarterback battles. So we're looking into that as well. But man, game 3 of a 4-game series tonight between the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs. First pitch scheduled for 8:05 Eastern Standard Time. And if anyone tuned into last night's game, gosh, it was an embarrassment. 20-9. And you look at yesterday's game and you would almost figure that this team wasn't contending for playoffs. Well, we are. We have Drew Smiley on the mound for the Chicago Cubs. He's 8-7 with a 4.5 ERA. He'll be going up against our Brandon Williamson, who is 3-2 with a 4.48 ERA. Like I said, game 3 of 4, wrapping up a road series. And as I mentioned earlier this week, as I talked about it last week, it's about just taking care of one series at a time. We're officially at the beginning of August. All right, August 2nd. We got 2 months left of baseball to be played with. All right, and we just got done through a really tough divisional series against Milwaukee last week. We went to LA. We took 2 of 3, so we evened things up. And I think it's crucial that we go in and we cannot drop, 3 games of 4 against the Cubs. I don't care if it's home or away. To finish off this road stands, we got to find a way to even maybe 2-2 apiece or even take the series. And a performance like last night just would not, it cannot be acceptable again. Now, we do have to remind ourselves that, with how good the Reds have been playing lately, I think they have surprised a lot of players, a lot of teams, a lot of staff, a lot of fans, obviously. But it's important that the Reds continue. If the season ended today and the Reds did not make it to the playoffs, I'm still satisfied. But, we got to find a way to finish off the season. And we got 2 whole months, a lot of baseball left to be played. And I feel like, all right, here we go. Which, to me, leads me down into this question. Are you guys satisfied with how the Reds approached this draft deadline, which was yesterday? And we saw plenty of moves. We saw Max Scherzer leave. We saw Justin Verlander go back to Houston. The Texas was phenomenal in making 4, 5, 6 different trades to improve the ball club. And if you are a contending team today, you have to be one of those guys on the list of figuring out a way to make the move. Now, the Reds didn't go empty-handed at this trade deadline. They did pick somebody up. And was it Sam Hall or whoever from Oakland? We picked up a relief pitcher. So you add someone to the bullpen. And that was maybe key, critical. Right? You go add somebody from, the 2 biggest things that you need to do is either add a bullpen guy or add a starting pitcher. And I think a lot of fans were hoping to add a starting pitcher, someone that can give you an every 5-day start, that can give you at least a solid 5, maybe 6 innings of outing, and give your bullpen a break. And take some pressure off these younger guys as we await Hunter Green's and Nick Lodolo's return. And I was a bit disappointed that the Reds didn't really capitalize on it. Now, Nick Krall is in a tough position right now because back at the beginning of the season, the Cincinnati Reds created this game plan that throughout the course of this year, we were going to bring up a handful of minor league guys, replacing them with the guys we started the season off, guys like Will Myers, potentially Will Benson, even in, a Nick Senzel for the foremost. And the idea was that throughout the course of the year, we're going to get some of these younger guys in, right? And we're going to start getting them ready for the Reds' success for 2024, 2025. And there was no expectation that as of August 2nd, we would be sitting here contending, teeter-tottering among first place in the NL Central above every other team, and then, in talking about potential, all right, well, if we don't win the division, we have a shot at the wild card. And now we sit here in August, and I think Nick Krall had a complicated decision to make. Do you stick with the process that's still, because we haven't seen nearly half of the guys that are expected to come up, or do we go out there and go for it all now? Now, I would say off the top of my head, we need to go for it all. There is no promises of next year, even with the guys that we have. We're at a position where I say, hey, we have a run. We could hold down 2 more months. We still have players coming back. You go out there and you try to contend, and even if you don't make it, you don't make it. Or even if you make it to the postseason and lose in the wild card weekend, then I'm happy with it. But you got to try. And I was hoping that with them trying, you would see that through management making some sort of deal by the trade deadline yesterday. So it's a bit frustrating as a fan to sit here and say, well, what did we walk away with? Honestly, nobody. This Oakland Athletic, and I don't know too much about it. I'm sure he's a good guy, and I'm sure he could come in and help our bullpen out. But if we, I think people will look back and say, if we did not make it to the postseason, this is one of the reasons why we didn't make it, because we weren't aggressive during the trade deadline. But I want people to remember this, and I'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at this for as of right now. But remember this: the Reds would not be able to acquire a lot of talent unless you're willing to lose a lot of talent. And right now, we have a good amount of talent that still awaits the big leagues. Andrew Abbott, Levi Stroud, who's still working on himself, Noelvi Marte. There's a list of Christian Encarnacion Strand, for example. And the plan is still to bring them up through the big leagues. So by putting them on what direction do we take in? Do we still believe in our system down below that we just got to give them time? Or do we, or else if we need to go out and grab somebody, we're going to have to give those rookies up. And it makes all that work, if we don't make it to the postseason this year, go for none. So although I'm acceptive to seeing what Cincinnati didn't do, saying, hey, we're going to believe and we're going to trust our system and we're going to, talk about and move with the younger guys we have, I'm a bit disappointed in the overall aggressiveness. They weren't even in conversations for any talent that was available on the trade deadline. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Winners and losers, we got grades coming up. Like I said, I got the rankings coming up as well. We'll talk some NFL here. and we'll get you guys ready for AEW Dynamite coming up tonight, celebrating 200 episodes of All Elite Wrestling. We'll also take our first look at SummerSlam this Saturday. If you guys are tuning us in on our YouTube page, thank you so much. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Have those notifications on so you don't miss a single episode. If you guys are tuning us in on our Facebook page or Twitter, we thank you. Welcome to the program. If you guys want to comment and get involved into the conversations today, please head on over to our YouTube page, comment below. We'll get you guys going up here. For those who are downloading us and taking us on the road, we thank you. Welcome you guys. You guys could all check. If you guys miss anything from the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, you guys be sure to check us out at our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com. Let's take our first break of the program. First time out coming up. More still to come. 2 hours coming up next. Here, you guys are listening to The Throwing on the TNC Sports Talk Show YouTube channel. Alrighty, 6:26 here on a Wednesday afternoon. If you guys are just getting home from work or about to get off, hey, it's Wednesday. You guys made it halfway through the week. Drive home safely. The throw-in, is given to you thanks to StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk Show YouTube channel, where you can create podcasts, videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out the free version today at StreamYard.com. All righty, let's get right back down to business. Well, you know what? That trade deadline is coming on. And I think it's a bit unfortunate, to be honest. I was a bit disappointed in the Reds overall. But it's okay. You know, whatever has happened August 1st before 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's behind us. We're on the final 2 months of the regular season. And let me give it to you guys like this. I'm going to paint you guys this playoff picture right now. For the American League, as of today, Baltimore has the best record. Yes, surprisingly, Baltimore Orioles. Well, they hold the number 1 seed in the American League playoffs if they would end today, followed by the Texas out of the West and Minnesota Twins out of the Central. Tampa Bay holds that top wildcard seed, ranking number 4 at 6.5 games above. Houston, number 5, 2 games above, both teams above the Toronto Blue Jays, who hold the last and final seed as of right now. Where Boston is a game and a half back. The Angels are 3 games back. The Yankees are 3.5 games back. And Seattle are 3.5 games back as well. Another 2 teams yet to mention, Cleveland 6 games back, and Detroit is 12 out of 15, and they are 11.5 games back. So coming up for this race in the American League, things that really tracked my attention first and foremost is that East standings. Baltimore and Tampa Bay has been battling it back and forth for nearly, I'd say a couple of weeks now. Ever since Baltimore beat the Dodgers on a Wednesday afternoon, to capture first place in the American League East. Texas is a team that surprises me out of the West. I mean, they don't surprise me. They look like they've been all in. But with how Houston plays, I mean, like I said, still plenty of baseball left to be played. Houston has a 2-game lead in the wild card. But, Texas made a huge, huge push at this trade deadline. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Minnesota is kind of having a nice, comfortable lead out there in the central standings. If we take a look at this wild card, Tampa Bay seems to be confident where they're at. Houston, I think, is still going to be in there. Toronto's down at the bottom. We still see the East Coast, surprisingly, even though the Dodgers and the Yankees haven't been playing well, or the Boston and Yankees haven't been playing well, Angels are still looking to stay alive. And I doubt they will be contenders up and through maybe halfway in September, but I feel like they'll fall out eventually, or they'll come close and have a 500 season. I feel like the Yankees, like the Angels, have what it takes to kind of, all right, this year they're going to be 500, and then, next year, maybe the year after that is when they really push for a postseason run. And it's important for the Angels to have a successful year, at least a 500 year, right? If not better, if they can, because you have guys like Ohtani and Trout that are running out of time that are not going to wait around forever for this success from the Angels. They want it now. And surprisingly, normally Angels get off to a good start of the season and then they die down. Well, you kind of seen the Angels hold on for the most part. They're on the outside looking in. They have a chance to get on the inside. They got some work to do, though. And then Seattle as well, they're trying to hold on. I think they're trying to fight for their lives out there on the West Coast. But Yankees and Boston are your two from the East. It looks like it's going to be the East and West Coast dominating the American League division come playoffs time. As of the National League on this hand, Toronto, best record in baseball. They have the first round bye, followed by the Dodgers out there in the West. Very similar to Baltimore and Texas in the American League. Cincinnati currently holds that third, the Central right now standings. They have that third seed, and it's going to be a back and forth throughout the remainder of the season against Milwaukee. And by the way, let's not forget to mention that Cincinnati does not play Milwaukee the remainder of the year. So it's not like they're going to have a series in September that can really determine this playoff outcome. We get through that, and then in the wild card, you have San Francisco with the game ahead, Philadelphia a half a game, and Milwaukee is holding on by a thread in the wild card. On the outside looking in, Miami and Arizona is a game out. I think Arizona is starting to get gassed. They got swept by the Reds not too long ago, a few weeks ago. And the Reds, on this matter, we talk about upcoming schedules. Well, after they wrap up a 4-game series here, 2 more against Chicago at Wrigley Field, they're going to head home for a 3-game series against the Nationals, which I presume that this should be a nice, easy little walk in the park. And then they'll have a series against Miami at home. So, you can definitely help your case, because by this weekend, depending how the Reds play, knocking on my table here, we can see the Reds at the bottom of this wild card division. And you have to keep Miami, Arizona, Chicago, who's 3.5 games back, and San Diego, who's 5 games back. You got to keep them as far away as possible. And you're done. You just got through playing Chicago here in 2 more games. San Diego, you got to do your job against them. You're practically done taking on Arizona. So Miami's your next job right now. 1 series at a time, but this is what's accumulating to be some really, really fun baseball here in the next 2 months. That is how your standings look if the playoffs began today. But let's talk about this. Were you guys satisfied? What was your biggest highlights of the trade deadline? Were you guys excited? I mean, I shared with you how I felt about the Reds. Okay, I just didn't feel like they did enough. On a grading scale on CBS Sports, this was an article written by R.J. Anderson. It's a 12-minute read. You can find it. It was the 2023 MLB trade deadline grades mark for all 30 teams as Angels and Rangers receive an A, Yankees fail. And you really know who's all in and who's not. Arizona gets an A. They're surprised that the Diamondbacks were able to land Paul Sewald, a premium late-inning reliever under control in another season, without sacrificing anyone they're likely to miss. So they give them an A. And Arizona's not too far out of the NL West, and they're not too far out of the wild card. And so after, they listen, everyone goes through their hots and their other ups and downs. And I think Arizona right now is going through their downs, and hopefully they could turn it around, because definitely once you get into, August and September baseball, you kind of know, and you kind of figure out, all right, who's going to be there. The Atlanta Braves needed some pitching, and they built up their bullpen, acquiring Pierce Johnson, Brad Hand, turning Taylor Hearn into Nicky Lopez. I mean, I think Atlanta has done pretty good capturing the guys that can help them go. And I don't think that there's any concern. They have the best record in baseball. And I think that they improved. So they're going to get, they're in opinionated, according to CBS Sports. They give them a B. I give them an A on that hand. Baltimore, they added 2 right-handers. They didn't really quite capitalize on getting a bat, to be honest. But you have to be happy adding Jack Flaherty to the team. According to them, they get a C. We get down to, for example, like Cincinnati, they get a D. We talked about the pitching. All right. They should have made a splash in the trade deadline, looking at some key pitchers to help them get through, especially with all the injuries that we have. Give David Bell something to work with when it comes down to, scenario pitching. I mean, otherwise it was disappointing. That's the grades that the Reds get. The Cubs, by the way, get a B if you're following the grades. Angels get an A. They kept Ohtani, which I think was a really good deal. The approach netted them Lucas Giolito, Ronaldo Lopez, CJ Cron, Randall Gruchek, and Dominic Leone. The Angels' capacity to upscale the limited by a weak farm system, which is true. So they stacked up on some of these veterans. All right, some of these guys that could get their own. Hey, you got CJ Cron, a former Angel who's going back to LA. They're looking like, hey, we got to push, and this is how we're going to push. We're going to get players that can play now. I like it. They get an A, and I agree with it. Dodgers have a history of pulling off star landing deals at the deadline. Not so much this time. No. They played it safe so far. Mid-tier veteran additions like Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly, Ahmed Rosario. I mean, and Enrique Hernandez, not really too much. They're still pretty good names. Hernandez, Rosario, no names. Let me put it that way. There's a difference between a no name, non-no name. No name, non-no name is like, who is he? Let me go Google search him. And he doesn't pop up on Google. So you got to go into the Encyclopedia Baseball just to look up those names. Well, these guys are known. They also picked up Brian Yarborough. So, I mean, they get a solid B. And we see, and here's the thing. Here's what I want you to notice at this list, at this grade list as I share with you. We see teams making impact, teams that are contending right now, like the Angels, like the Dodgers, like the Cubs, that are trying to play, that knows what it takes for the next 2 months to play, and what they've done to make a difference in their ball club, compared to what Cincinnati has done and why we're so disappointed. Milwaukee, on that other hand, trade one or more of really Adames, Corbin Burns, I mean, they didn't really trade so much. You wouldn't know it based on their deadline. Andrew Chafin, Carlos Santana, and Mark Kahn are fine if sleepy additions. So, I mean, Brewers get a C. Minnesota get an utter F, and they are contending. The Twins did not engage with the deadline beyond swapping out Jorge Lopez for Dylan Floro. I mean, and to be honest, I feel like, you got to give a team a bad credit for a team that is contending. The Twins just, oh my goodness. Now, Mets I think what reason why the Mets were so good, they dealt both Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. They opened up a lot of their salary cap, which I think was needed in a set of, hey, we may not be able to get into the postseason this year, but we're going to set ourselves up financially for the next few years by getting rid of our two top pitchers. Yankees get an F again. They think Keenan Middleton is a perfectly solid addition who could even be better than that if he gets his home run rate in order. But we confess that we were certain the Yankees would do more in buying or selling. Didn't quite happen. Philadelphia gets a B. San Diego gets a B. They just keep waiting on AJ Preller to do something big. He didn't this year. Last year, he was known for doing something with Juan Soto. Ended up Scott Barlow, Garrett Cooper, G-Man Choi, Rich Hill, which are good additions to the organization, but we'll see how they affect. They need to turn things around also if they're looking to be in the postseason. San Francisco got themselves a nice little F, as they really didn't do anything. Only thing they got was AJ Pollock. Could they get all they did was get rid of AJ Pollock. Cardinals got an A. They know where they're at. I don't think they're expected to do anything else. And last but not least, let's talk about the Rangers. They were able to secure Max Scherzer, Jordan Montgomery, two above-average starter pitching, plus a potential useful reliever in Chris Stratton, without compromising their ability to make further additions, be it through trade or free agency. That's a win, a huge win. Texas, I think, pulled it off more than anyone else. I was very impressed by what Texas did. So, I mean, that's just my personal note. But where do you think your team landed on? Like you said, Reds, not so great, in my opinion. They could have done better. And as I mentioned, teams that are looking to contend, they know it by July if you're going to be contending or not. You have a chance. You got to keep on, listen, I think the Reds are just looking to sit here and say, all right, we have this plan, we have this system in place, and we're going to continue because we believe in the system. We believe in what our game plan was at the beginning of the year, and we've already won over our fans back, which was one of our main goals. Everything else right now, the standings, the record that they have going on, the success they have on right now, is all a bonus to what their initial game plan was, because that's not expected for 2-3 more years. So that's why the Reds have done very little to no work. All right, let's take a break. Let's come on back and take our first visit at the SummerSlam coming up here this Saturday. You guys are listening to the Throwing on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, let's get back into the swing of things. 6:47, bottom half of the hour. Here on the Throw-In 2-hour program. Alrighty. Well, hey, SummerSlam is coming up this Saturday, August 5th, in Detroit, Michigan, which is going to be exciting to observe. And I noticed some of the match cards, and I noticed not all the matches that I expected to be on this match card. So basically, WWE did not overbook this card. They actually have a total of 8 matches, in my opinion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8 matches, including a SummerSlam Battle Royale. So that's yeah. Kind of interesting to see the Battle Royale. You probably definitely want to advertise athletes, superstars. And here's the way to do so without actually having feuds. For example, we talk about talent that, matches that we expected to see. I was expected to see Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus for this year's SummerSlam, but we did not. We're gonna get that in 2 weeks when Raw is in, I think, Quebec, Canada, Montreal, Canada, one of the two. So we'll see that feud kind of, go underway. Then that's another 2 weeks to push out the storyline. And to be honest, for me, I feel like that storyline has pushed on far enough, and the match needed to happen. I feel like they rushed it a bit too soon, in my opinion, from right after, basically almost immediately after WrestleMania, after Trish, Becky, and Lita beat Damage Control. You then get this feud where Becky and Trish go into Night of Champions, then that's when Zoe Stark makes her appearance. So I feel like this was one of the feuds that took too long to tell, and that they probably could have waited and took a break from it and reinvented it, or even keep Trish on the positive and maybe have her turn at Night of Champions. Maybe have them in a tag match or something. I could have seen a tag match where they went after Ronda and Shayna Baszler for the tag team titles. There's just, if it was up to me, I would have rearranged it where there was more storytelling and, more built up to the match. And I would have had at SummerSlam. I remember Trey telling me at WrestleMania that that's exactly what they're looking for. And now, since you have 8 matches on the card, and you just decided not to throw this one on there, so you're going to extend yourself 2 weeks from now. So a bit disappointed. We also don't see the tag team titles being defended, which is, I don't know what the status is of Kevin Owens or whatnot. So definitely a couple of things that you expect to take place are not taking place. I know Santos Escobar, who was on SmackDown, NXT last night, he assisted and teamed up with Tony D'Angelo and Stax to defeat Gallus. And last night NXT, he's not, he's supposed to have a number 1 contender spot for the United States Championship, but that's not even being advertised at SummerSlam this year, which is one of the 4 biggest events of the summer, which, we'll definitely come on here Friday and give you our initial thoughts, predictions, but I guess we'll see. WWE gave out or sent out their second quarter highlights of revenue. So I kind of want to go through some key moments of that, maybe point a few things out revenue wise. We'll start things off with revenue was for, let's remember before I get into numbers that WWE on April 3rd, matter of fact, the night after WrestleMania, was sold to Endeavors. Vince McMahon is still chief executive, but Endeavors officially now owns the majority of the WWE. So this is the first revenue report post Vince McMahon era, to the point where he's the only one behind the bar, behind the reins. And yeah, you could say he is, but at the same time, there are other people that are overlooking his company to make sure you get the best quality and the best product that you could possibly get. So revenue was $410 million, an increase of 25%, and a quarterly record. Operating income was $83 million, an increase of 26%, and adjusted OIBDA1 was $140 million, and an increase of 54%, and a quarterly record, which is a good deal. Let's give that some round of applause. On the other hand, we continue this conversation and look. Returned $9.8 million of capital to shareholders through dividend payments. Okay. Viewership of WWE's weekly flagship program, SmackDown and Raw, increased 26% and 19%, respectively, in the P18 through 49 demographic, significantly outperforming overall broadcast and cable television, which both declined by 12%. So the weekly program of Raw and SmackDown viewership went up 26%. For SmackDown, 19% for Raw. So then you get into each WWE premium live event, which in this quarter was WrestleMania, Backlash, and Night of Champions, set global unique viewership records with year-over-year increase of 29%, 34%, and 45% respectively. Now, remember in this category, just keep in mind that initially WrestleMania is always, considered being one of the best of, PLEs of the WWE every year. WrestleMania, biggest thing of them all. I expect them to be high as is, but I think the booking also helped. You also see Backlash, and I think a lot of that was because they were in Puerto Rico. And then Night of Champions because they're in Saudi Arabia. Live event revenue increased 51%. So people would go to live events over the prior period, which, okay, so maybe weather inclements has something to do with it. Maybe, you talk about tax returns and, there's other conversations on the reasons why the last period wouldn't be as significant. But people are going to these live events much more throughout this time. Maybe it's to see Cody Rhodes. Maybe it's the Roman Reigns travel because you don't see Roman Reigns on television each and every week, but you get these special hosts. I mean, Roman Reigns came to Cincinnati. He, that's something that he is not scheduled to do each and every time. So that is a big deal. And people will go out just to see their personal wrestler. Reflecting continued strong demand for domestic and international events. Okay, so basically they're starting to become more of a global enterprise, which because now other countries are wanting for WWE to go to the live, to have a live event or have a show or have a premiere live. And that's the reason behind it. You talk about just the other week, they went down to Mexico. North American live events, average attendance was 9,870 and an increase of 45% and a quarterly record, which is a really good deal. In July, Money in the Bank was held at the O2 in London. Money in the Bank was the WWE's highest grossing arena event in company's history. Money in the Bank also set new records of viewership, sponsorships, revenue, merchandise revenue, and social media activities, which I think deserves a round of applause. There we go. As previously disclosed on April 3rd, 2023, WWE and Endeavor announced its agreement to combine WWE and UFC to form a new publicly listed company. The new company will be named TKO Group Holding Incorporated. As previously disclosed in June 2023, the applicable waiting period under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Interest Improvements Act of 1976, as amended, expired. In addition, all required foreign regulatory approvals were obtained for second quarter. The transaction is expected to close the second half of 2023. The transaction is subject to the satisfaction of customary closing conditions. So that was some highlights and news. So overall, WWE did pretty well when it came down to them having their list last. And I expect them to have a good. You know what? A lot of it was from after WrestleMania. It was Puerto Rico, Saudi Arabia, O2 Arena. Now we're back in the States, so I guess we'll see how things go. Hour number 1 is complete. Coming up in hour number 2, we got a bunch of football to talk about, so let's get right to it. The throw-in continues. Yeah, the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, hour number 2 here on the program is given to you thanks to Spreaker from iHeartRadio, where you can upload your own very personal podcast, be able to see analytics, and monetize each and every your podcast. Distribution of among all large major podcast streaming services such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and more. Try out their free version today at Spreaker.com. Alrighty. Hour number 2 just getting underway here in the program. And as we mentioned, hour number 1, we had some breaking news. And that was AEW extending the contracts of the Elite to a new multi-year agreement. That's Adam Page, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Adam Page, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega. Now, as it's big news, AEW is coming up tonight. They're celebrating their 200th episode of professional wrestling. And let's take a moment to applaud that. The AEW may never, ever be 10 times better or even twice as better as WWE. I think that is those are some large shoes to fill. And I remember when AEW first came out a couple years back, I got to give them kudos because they lasted. A new company going through the pandemic, you kind of wonder, all right, what happens? Do you go under? And Tony Khan could have went under and given up on the idea, but he stuck with it. They took some cheap ways out, but they provide a new style of professional wrestling. And I think what really catapulted AEW, in my eyes, is the fact that they are available on simple cable networks. TBS, TNT, just like the WWE on USA and Fox, where practically everyone on every cable services gets that type of television. When you become available to everyone to watch at their own expense, it is easy to grow a fan base that is successful. Ring of Honor is not on television, and especially television I could watch. Impact Wrestling is not on television that I have. I don't have the channel for Impact Wrestling. I see New Japan Pro Wrestling once in a while. Lucha Underground is not available. And when you want to go watch maybe the product on YouTube, you kind of have to pay for an additional service. And I don't think that these independent companies like New Japan or Ring of Honor or Impact Wrestling, Lucha Underground, AAA, whatever you want to consider them, or whichever one you'd see, they don't have the money, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the X, Y's, and Z's to put themselves on television. Tony Khan is capable of putting his product on television that everyone watches. So you now have the option, thanks to Vince McMahon, thanks to Tony Khan, to choose which type of wrestling program you watch on a weekly basis. And if you are a wrestling fanatic, you can watch all 5 wrestling events in 1 week. Now, that's a lot of wrestling for me. And with all, for us covering other sports, it is, I don't really watch AEW. It also provides a different style of wrestling, which is not the same from WWE. The WWE focuses and derives themselves on storylines, storytelling, and characters. AEW, everyone's a human being. Everyone can let's go put up the moves. Let's go put up the spotlights. Let's get the guts, bloods, and excitement going, knocked out of the fans. Which is okay. And if you're in that type of wrestling style, you have AEW for that. If you're into the creating a character and the personality, and then that's WWE for you. And it's okay to be a fan of both. Okay, I've watched AEW. I like the product of AEW. Do I watch it every week? No. Nothing personal against them. It's just something that it's a bit more difficult to follow. Now, do I still pay attention to what they're doing on social media? Of course. The best I can. They are my alternative wrestling program I'll watch if the WWE closes today. But congratulations to AEW for 2 whole years, or for as many episodes as they're running. I see them growing. I don't know how big they'll grow, but they are growing. They're going international, which is a huge deal, and they're getting a jump start on it because they know that's business oriented. They also are growing based off of heading out there to having different shows. AEW Collision just started a couple months ago. I know they were pushing AEW Rampage. So, and then they had the Dark on YouTube. So they were out there. They were pretty well known out there, and they're growing, and they're still growing. And I hope they continue to grow, because today, for me as a fan, although, yes, I would like to see a good competition between 2 companies, it's not about the competition. It's about just going out there, giving me a good wrestling match. Give me something to want to come out, buy your merchandise, and root the hell out of you or hate the hell out of you. I don't care. Entertain me. That's all I care about. Talking about entertainment, on the other hand, NFL preseason is here. And there are some quarterback battles already happening. So kind of let's take you down one by one. I got 4 listed here. So let's start off with Tampa Bay, and Baker Mayfield is technically battling Kyle Trask. Now, as I was putting this list together, this first 2 teams on this list, one of the competitive quarterbacks, I don't know who the hell they are. And that really gives them a blue chip under their shoulder because I can't really judge them without knowing who they are and what they're capable of doing. But yet, maybe, and I sure hope that they haven't been in the league for long enough to know. But my biggest take out of Tampa Bay is that I do feel that they would push to work with Baker Mayfield as their starting quarterback. But you see, Baker went to Carolina last year in hope that Carolina was hoping, that Baker Mayfield was, after everything that he proclaimed he was going to do, everything that he proclaimed he was going to be, that he was going to actually help lead this team to the postseason. And we did not get to see that. Now, he did redeem himself a bit in Los Angeles, but I guess that was enough that Tampa Bay wanted a new contract. Now, there is going to be some pretty big expectations right off the gate for whoever is starting opening day when we get to their schedule, and I'll talk about it then. But because this is the first year without Tom Brady, and regardless of what you think of Tom Brady, when he was with Tampa Bay, he instantly changed the game of Buccaneer football. So if it's Baker Mayfield, hey, you got a lot of shoes to fill. We're expecting you to be the type of quarterback you were back in Cleveland. And with an open position now, right now, you have Sam Howell in New Orleans. You have, or not New Orleans, Atlanta. You have Derek Carr in New Orleans. You have Bryce Young in Carolina. This is a division that should maybe be competitive against Tampa Bay and New Orleans, possibly Carolina, depending how Bryce Young comes out the game. So I'm expecting Baker Mayfield to take this win over Kyle Trask. The second one, I heard a little bit about the second quarterback. It's the Indianapolis Colts. And you have the newly found draft, Anthony Richardson, which I think surprised some people going up so high as he did in the draft pick this past year. He's going up against Gardner Minshew. Now, I think just like Carolina and just like Houston, they know that they are not playoff ready. They got to continue adding to their team, to their organization. But I don't feel like, Indianapolis is going to hesitate to throw in Anthony Richardson. But at the same time, they're not going to go rush Anthony Richardson to come in. If that means he has to stay, take 3-4 games to really get himself established and settled in and ready to start actual NFL games, then I don't think Indianapolis and the Colts will have any issues throwing out Minshew in the early goings. I still do believe that the ultimate goal is for Anthony Richardson, obviously, to be their opening day starter. We got the San Francisco 49ers, and I really like this type of battle. You got Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Sam Darnold. And the reason why it's a three-way quarterback battle right now is because of two reasons. All thanks to San Francisco and the NFL. One, Trey Lance got hurt early on last year, took him out the rest of the season, and he's very questionable to begin, most likely unlikely to begin this campaign. There's even rumors that he may be out this campaign, which is not a good sign for the career, for the future of Trey Lance. And remember, 49ers were sitting here and betting on Trey Lance to be their future quarterback for the next several years. Now, they got lucky with Brock Purdy. Now, I have to give credit where credit's due last season. Jimmy Garoppolo did help lead the team to a playoff run. Okay? What he did at the end of September, October, and November cannot go unturned for it. Brock Purdy came in, finished off the regular of the season, went into the postseason, and maybe off of rookie luck, had a good postseason run, went up and got hurt, forced Christian McCaffrey to become quarterback because their third-string quarterback got hurt also. And with that being said, NFL has this new rule where you're allowed to have what's called an emergency quarterback added on to your roster that is not included into your 54-man roster that you have prior to the game. And it could be any quarterback you want at any week given. And I think San Francisco is prepared to have Sam Darnold as Brock Purdy's backup. Now, according to Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy looks pretty good here early on during preseason. Given we got 6 weeks left of the preseason, we got to understand that Brock Purdy may come, but we have to take precaution toward the wins because there is a chance that Brock Purdy may continue his, may find struggles down the road. I like Brock. I was not saying that Trey is a bad quarterback, but I didn't like how San Francisco overlooked Jimmy Garoppolo, even though he is injury prone. So I am going for Brock to lead, and I hope that at some point this year we could see the return of Trey Lance. But then I also see Sam Darnold as the backup. Now, what I like about San Francisco is that I feel confident with the 49ers with all three quarterbacks. And I hope that they're going to stay on top of the NFC West, and the only team I could think of, unless Matthew Stafford and the Rams are healthy, and that's a long shot there, but we could see Los Angeles slip back into the postseason run, where we'd like to also see Geno Smith and Seattle Seahawks rub it in Russell Wilson's face once again by making their plays back in the, playoffs this year. But I still think San Francisco early out is at the top of this division, as long as Brock Purdy, I think, is healthy. If Sam Darnold has to start the season and he ends up, and Brock Purdy and Trey Lance are out to begin the season, then I think San Francisco has some issues. But I'm going with Brock Purdy. Last but not least, this one is a bit different for me. Washington Commanders have Sam Howell going up against Jacoby Brissett. And I'm going to say this, that Jacoby Brissett, my man, backup quarterback for Lamar Jackson with Baltimore, ended up playing a couple of games. Or was it Baltimore? That wasn't Baltimore. Was it Cleveland? Let me look that up really fast. All right. He was with the Browns. Excuse me. He played 12, or he played, let's see how he did last year. He played last year with the Browns. That's what I could tell you. I don't want to sell for. There we go. All right. We played for the Browns last season. He played in 16 games. He started in 11 games. He went 4 for 7. He had a 64% completion rating, and he threw for 2,608 yards, averaging 7 yards a pass with 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I mean, for me, Jacoby Brissett, who I feel like he fits better as the starting quarterback. And if you're asking me, and if it was up to me to give the starting quarterback position in Washington, Sam Howell, I appreciate your efforts, but Jacoby Brissett is my guy. And Maybe you could work a 1-2 punch in Washington. Now, Washington was a team who came close last year to postseason. Didn't quite make it, unfortunately, because they didn't think that playoff matters at the end of the season. But you know what? It does. So, all right, that is the battling quarterbacks. If you guys have a quarterback to battle, please let me know. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the Dallas Cowboys schedule and the New York Giants schedule. As our number 2 continues, you guys are listening to The Throne here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. 7:25. We would like to give a big shout out to our friends at Epidemic Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music link. For more information, check out epidemicsound.com. I also like to give a big shout out to Canva for tonight's video production. Create presentation, Facebook ads, social media posts, and more. Check out what they got to offer, all out of canva.com. All right, let's get, there's nothing, no time to lose, no time to waste. Let's pull it up here. Let's go share screen, window. All right, let me just pop it up for you guys. There's really no easy way to hide it here. But this is the Dallas Cowboys schedule. And I already have markings here, and I'm going to go over them one by one. Okay. And, listen, Dallas Cowboys are a team who every year they say, this is the year. We're Americans team, and we're going to go on and win the Super Bowl. And they, and for the most part, they had themselves a decent season, winning at least 10 games, if not more. And then somewhere along the line in the postseason, they end up choking. And it usually seems to always be, not enough to get to the postseason. Okay, they lost against the 49ers in this year's postseason. And you ask yourself, well, do you settle for a postseason run even though you don't go to the Super Bowl and don't get better each and every year over winning a Super Bowl one year and not going back for 3 or 5? And the answer for me for that is, unless you have a minimum of 10, okay, consecutive playoff runs, none of that matters, okay? You could have one Super Bowl win, and I'll go back and I'll tell you, hey, the New England Patriots won Super Bowl so-and-so. And I remember that because the New England Patriots won. I may go on the edge and say, hey, the New England Patriots came back, because you remember the comeback that the Patriots did against Arizona when they got out to a 28-3 lead. And at halftime, Tom Brady returns his team to go back on and win the Super Bowl. I don't remember all the other teams that went to the playoffs that year. So I think that's where the question has it this year. And for Dallas, I wonder how much longer can you live in this fantasy that you're such a great team, but yet productivity says you haven't gotten nowhere in the last 4 years. For this year, we're going to kick things off in the NFC East. We'll do the Dallas today, coming up here right after the Cowboys is the Giants. Tomorrow will be the Eagles and the Commanders. And Friday, I'll give you my overall thought and prediction. Next week, we'll do another division. Expecting to do one division a day and then an overall review. The problem I have with Dallas is Cooper Rush was not given enough credit. A lot of people were waiting for Cooper Rush to fall flat. I think he did quite well as a backup to Dak Prescott. You don't have Ezekiel Elliott, which in my opinion, I think although Ezekiel is a good quarterback, I think you kind of take a little bit off your shoulders, a little bit of weight off your shoulders on that one. But you also run into now, because the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, they won the NFC championships. They want to repeat as much as you want to get advanced forward. Well, and that's on one side of the table. The other side of the table, you have the Giants, and you have the Giants with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, who just signed his 1-year deal. So they are coming into the season knowing that, hey, if this is going to happen, that's going to happen now. And they went to the postseason last year. Then they didn't go far, but this was the first year in a couple of years that you saw the Giants go to the postseason. So Dallas really does have competition on both sides of the ball, in my opinion. Now, they kicked the season off on September 10th in New York against the Giants. Unfortunately, I see the Giants prevailing, getting off to a hot start. Followed by that, you have your home opener against the Jets, where Dak Prescott would go up against Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers will outshoot him, so they'll begin the season, in my opinion, 0-2. And that's one thing I think it's fun giving my predictions on these, because this is where you can now sit back and compare among other teams. They don't pick up their first victory until the end of September, as they beat Arizona on the road, followed by a win at home against the Patriots and Mac Jones, Bill Belichick. Oh, that would be a good win, October 1st. They'll head over to San Francisco, and I said the Cowboys could beat the 49ers. And one of my things when we get to the NFC West and San Francisco's schedule, I'm hoping Brock Purdy is the quarterback, because if he's not, they may not have themselves a good year. They may have themselves a 500 year, but they also are coming into this tomorrow is the Hall of Fame NFL game that is played, and you don't have Nick Bosa at practice. You're going to rely on, that's one of your top best defensive players. So I think Dallas can beat the 49ers on the road in San Francisco. And then they're going to head down south to SoFi Stadium to beat the Chargers. So they'll begin, before they hit their bye, they'll begin 4-2, which isn't too bad in the division. Week 8, they're going to head to, they'll be home for the Rams, which they'll pick up a victory. Lose to the Eagles in their first attempt. They'll be on the road. So that's the reason why they lose. That's going to kick off November. So that's 5-3. And then they'll go ahead and beat the Giants at home and split that series. They'll go on to beat Bryce Young and the Panthers, Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett in Washington, and then also Geno Smith in Seattle, which will catapult themselves. So that's 4, that's 8, that's 9-3 by the end of November and Thanksgiving. And then we get ourselves to back home against Philadelphia, where I think that they will lose again, followed by it against the Bills. And then when they go to Miami, they'll beat the Dolphins down south in Florida. They'll go ahead and beat the Lions and beat the Commanders to end up having a 12-5 season. So I believe that the Cowboys have set themselves up for some success in this division. But as I mentioned, they have to go on and they have the Eagles on one side of the table, and they have the New York Giants on the other side of the table. So let's talk about the Giants on this hand coming up next. Alrighty, I want to go ahead and inform you guys. I was on the Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast a couple of days ago with Steve. We're talking about at what point is it time for wrestlers or companies to part ways with each other. It was a good conversation. I actually filled in and replaced Dwaylen as he was down. I didn't replace him. No one can replace Dwaylen. He is a human encyclopedia when it comes to down to professional wrestling. But I filled in for Dwaylen while him and his family is having a tremendous time. I hope, down in Florida. But you guys could join Steve and Dwaylen on YouTube with Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. And you miss any episodes, Steve just had an interview yesterday with Nora Gabriel, NWF's finest, and as they get ready for summer sizzle, where you can check out Steve and Dwaylen on their YouTube channel, Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, a weekly wrestling podcast show analyzing, giving their opinions, stories, a lot more. You guys can follow them on social media, and if you miss any episode, be sure to download them on any audio streaming platforms. Take them on the road wherever you go at Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. They also have a couple of different podcasts within themselves individually. I know Steve has the Cubicle Chat. I don't know Dwaylen's off the top of my head. I know Steve told me back on Monday, but I forgot. But you guys could check them out. And listen, go check out the one that I did a couple of days ago. All right, so we're talking about, we just got done talking about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's get over to the New York Giants, excuse me. And this one's going to be more interesting. Now, one of the biggest offseason concerns that I had was that the Giants were focusing themselves on signing a contract extension with Daniel Jones, which I think is respectfully right. So, but then Saquon Barkley wants a contract extension, and that kind of just jolted the whole, domino effect on how running backs aren't really as valuable in today's game than they would have been a few years back. Now, the good news is that the Giants went ahead and got a quarterback signed Saquon Barkley, which I thought that was a really good deal, because now you head into this preseason and you head into the offseason or to the regular season with everything, all your problems behind you. And now it's time to be like, all right, well, let's go on and get back to the postseason, because we had a good run last year. We beat Minnesota. We did lose to the Eagles, but that's okay, because we got to improve. Give us room. So they kick things off at home against the Cowboys, where they pick up a victory. And then they fly over to Arizona, where they'll pick up a victory over there. I believe the Giants' first loss will be at the hands of the San Francisco 49ers at the end of September, before they come home to face Seattle and beat Seattle, getting back on the winning ways. They'll head down south to Miami, beating the Dolphins, and they'll begin the first 5 games of the season 4-1. They'll head over to Buffalo, which they will lose to Buffalo, come back home and beat the Commanders at home. This is where things get a bit complicated, where they have to then face halfway through the season the New York Jets. Now, you're already 7 games in. You are 5-2. You face Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and I think the Jets, I don't know how well the Jets are going to be this year, but I feel like the Jets are going to have some impressive victories. And this is going to be one of them, the MetLife Stadium series. And hey, oh, by the way, this is interesting. This year, for the first time, the Giants and the Jets will actually have their logos at the 50-yard line in the center of the field. In the past, they would have their logo, the 50-yard line will have the NFL logo. Well, this year, they're going to actually have their individual logo, which is a nice, unique thing that they're doing for those two teams. But I think the Jets will have this one. They'll head back to the West Coast to take on the Raiders, which then they will lose followed by another loss in Dallas. That's 3 in a row. So that is now 5 and 6. So 5 and 5. They'll go 500. And don't remind you, this is their bye is not until week 13. They'll come back and pick up a win against Washington. They even pick up a win against the Patriots at home. And the only reason that's a win is because they are at home. And then they'll have a bye. They're one of the last weeks to have a bye in the NFL, which I think if they could survive in the record that they have, they'll go on to have some good things. They'll stay home to face the Packers with Jordan Love, and I think they'll lose to that one coming back. Winning in New Orleans, losing against the Eagles, beating the Rams on New Year's Eve, and then beating the Eagles at the last game of the season. At this point, I do believe that Philadelphia will be in the postseason. They're not really quite caring about the week 7, 18, and I think this is potentially, and I don't know how the other teams go, but this could be a wild card win to get the Giants into the postseason. Again, if the Giants or the Cowboys going to get into the division this year, I highly believe that it's going to be because of the wild card opportunity. So they pulled together a 10-7 win-loss record on the season. And I mean, it was pretty fun trying to put this 2-2 together on this hand. So I was pretty excited. I was pretty happy with how I predicted that. So I guess we'll see. So that's the fun of it. We'll have to see with what happens as the season is just 6 weeks away. Like I said, tomorrow we'll come back and give you the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. And then on Friday, we will give you an overview of the entire division, predicting top to bottom and any big outcomes. So that is our Cowboys and Giants. And I'll work on trying to put it up on the TNC Sports Talk Show website. All right, coming up next, bottom half of the hour, let's talk some football. Patrick Mahomes, okay, is okay with not being the highest paid quarterback. Plus AEW 200 episodes tonight. What is on the match card as they celebrate a special night? And if we have time, a little bit of NXT. So let's take you to the bottom of the hour here on the Throw-In, available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty. Well, don't forget those Reds and Cubs are about to begin here. Game 3 of 4 coming up tonight at 8:05. Get back on some winning ways after a terrible loss. But hey, we will be back again tomorrow. Another program with you right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. All right. I was just watching the clip. You know, Steve texted me yesterday, and he was like, hey, listen, we did a recording with Noah Gabriel. He's an NWF wrestler, and he's turned this heel character over the past several months. He's expected to go up against Kobe Kane at Summer Sizzle, which is their, summer event. If you're in the Ohio or Cincinnati and northern Kentucky area, you guys got something you guys don't have anything to do, I recommend going and check them out. He did an interview yesterday on his podcast, Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, up on YouTube, up on available audio streaming platforms. Well, he took Noah Gabriel at the end of the interview, took one of Armchair Booking Wrestling's podcast t-shirt, which you can find on TeePublic. And TeePublic, and if you actually scan this QR code, it will take you to our TeePublic website, which you could purchase anything TNC Sports Talk or The throw-in logos, we have coffee mugs, T-shirts, hoodies. It's going to get a bit chilly. So recommend going there, or you can find our merchandise shop through our webpage at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com. And Noah Garo ended up taking the T-shirt and blowing his nose on it at the very end. I thought that was very fun. I love the heckling with a lot of these talent athletes, especially as they come up through the big leagues. All right. Hey, NFL news here. Patrick Mahomes claims that he's okay not being the highest paid quarterback. And he actually had an interview with this. And he says that this is based off of the concept of Tom Brady. And if this is true, I think there's just another whirlwind of respect that is given to not only Patrick Mahomes, but Tom Brady itself. And anyone who wants to decide to follow in his footsteps. And I do wish athletes are more prone to following in these footsteps, because listen, Patrick Mahomes, of course, and I think if you're an athlete and you work hard and you're a good, talented athlete and you deserve to get paid. You deserve to make money in the sport that you work, you build your life on. A lot of athletes don't have a secondary job prior to the sport, especially in professional wrestling. But I also enjoy those athletes saying, well, I'm not the only one on the field. I'm not the only one making this possible. So although I will love nothing but a $500 million contract, I also want to make sure I have good receivers. I have good linemen. I have a good running back. I have good defensive players. And they should also get paid just the same. Now, I think you can argue if you should be the highest paying person of the team or I should get paid more than them. But Patrick Mahomes' mindset is, I don't care about the pay. Yeah, you're going to pay me what I think I'm worth, and I do have a number. I think I have a bottom dollar, but I also want you to save your paychecks. I want to save your checkbook, save the account, so you could pay for those players that help win the Super Bowl just as much as I do. Pay for the Travis Kelce, pay for the Hill, pay for anyone else on the Chiefs organization that can get to them, that can help them make it to the Super Bowl, because it is a team event. It's not just one person. I say, listen, I love Patrick Mahomes 10 times as much for that. We talk about Joe Burrow's contract coming up, and Justin Herbert just got his payday. Lamar Jackson got his payday. Joe Burrow, I think, wants to stay in Cincinnati, wants to get paid. I know that for a fact, but should he be the highest paying quarterback? Should he get paid more than Justin Herbert? Now, I personally feel, I would say if Joe Burrow could take the team back to the AFC Championship yet for a third year, give him the contract, no hands down. But does it or doesn't that tap into your expenditures again, for the remainder of the team? So if you need to sign a guy like Jamar Chase, maybe you couldn't give him as big of a contract as you expect to because you gave all the money to Joe Burrow. One of the biggest hits that the Bengals had this offseason was not losing one, not losing two, but losing three key backfield players on their defense. And that's a very big issue because your defense has to hold your opponent to within about 20 points average to win a game. 14 to 20 points is the average in order to win a football game. And if your defense cannot hold them down to that streak, then it becomes a concern. Like I said, you didn't lose one, you didn't lose two, you lost three. You lost both of your safeties, and you also lost one of your cornerbacks. And now the Bengals are relying on young talent, which I would love to see what this young talent's capable of, but there's so much uncertainty and so much unconfidence that because I haven't really seen anything from these young talents. So kudos to Patrick Mahomes being okay with not being the highest paid quarterback and being that guy that you have to go through in order to be one of the better quarterbacks in today's game. I do wish more players, especially more quarterbacks, because it's not just around quarterbacks. You have offensive linemen that should be getting paid. You have other players on the field that should be getting paid just as much as your quarterback, because they do also contribute more to the success rate of your team than just the quarterback. My opinion. So kudos to Patrick Mahomes. All right, AEW is celebrating their 200th episode tonight on TV. That's actually coming up here in just a few minutes. A few matches that we are expected to see. Jon Moxley takes on Trent Beretta and Penta in an anything goes match. And I feel like Jon Moxley, we talked at the beginning of the program about hitting that ceiling. Jon Moxley, I feel like is that one of those guys that has hit that ceiling in AEW. What more can he do? What more can you do? Not just in opponents, but in match stipulations. I mean, you kind of can only do so much that are so exciting that it just becomes maybe more unbearable to say, questioning why you're doing it. You've already done it. It's not as exciting the fifth time around as much as it was the second or first time around. But this is going to be a good match for tonight on this 200th episode. AEW Women's Champion Toni Storm will take on Hikaru Shida in singles competition. Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions Asu Open will take on El Hijo del Vikingo and Commando. I apologize if I butcher names. Not so great at it. The newly multi-year contract extension, the Elite, minus Hangman Adam Page. We got the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega going up against Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, and I think is Satnam Singh or something like that. Chris Jericho and Kosuke Takeshita will go up against Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara. FTW champion Jack Perry and Jerry Lynn will go face-to-face. And that is your match card for AEW Dynamite tonight. Like I said, celebrating 200 episodes, which is a remarkable moment of a professional wrestling company, especially as a newly reigned AEW who really had to fight a lot of battles. They are separate from definitely the style of wrestling that is presented from the WWE. They are competing, they want to be one of the top, products. And I strongly believe that they are. And they're doing a really good job. Although I will say it's nothing personal. I just don't watch them on a nightly basis. And, I think overall you're going to learn sometimes the hard way of what to do, what not to do, unfortunately. And every company goes through that. And I feel like as long as you learn from your mistakes and you can get better as a whole, then the company is going to stay around for a while. And I think one of the biggest benefits and the reasons why AEW is so successful, not just because they have the talent on their roster, it's because of the television deals that they're capable of having. A little bit of credit goes to Tony Khan, and he, when you are a famous person, or when you are a owner of a team that you can spend money on another company and draw more money in, then I think it works. TBS TNT, like I mentioned earlier in this show today, has multiple is on multiple streaming platforms, just like USA Network and Fox. And that's why when you become more easily accessible, it becomes easier to create a bigger global fan base. One of the reasons why Impact Wrestling is not as big as they are today is because where can you find Access TV? And how many people want to pay a subscription on their YouTube channel? So kudos to AEW and their 200 episode tonight. We'll talk a little bit about NXT tomorrow, as Rey Mysterio is expecting to come to NXT to confront Dom. Tony Angelo, like I said, Santo Escobar teamed up with Tony Angelo and Stacks to defeat Gallus. Trick Williams wants to be more than just a sidekick, which is understandable. Aaron Corbin has been on a nice streak since going down next. I think that's a good image, on the right path. So, all right, a lot more. We will continue our conversations tomorrow, but that's all we have for this evening. Wherever you guys are at, be safe, get home safe, enjoy some sports, some baseball, wrestling, Hall of Fame games tomorrow. Thank you guys for tuning into the Throw-In right here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.